Okay, everybody, good morning again. Here we are at the 10 o'clock hour of session 2 of our wonderful day of Rotary Learning. And so we're fortunate to have just wound up 1 hour in conversation with Ryan Char on youth service. And now we're going to toss the ball over to Mr. Dave Mostrin, who's going to chat at us a little bit about district grants. Dave, the ball is yours.
Thank you very much, Benson. I appreciate it. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's wonderful to be here and also to be able to share with you about the Rotary Foundation, the mystifying world of the Rotary Foundation for those of you that still feel you're inundated with things that you don't understand. And trust me, it does take a little while, but we'll get you through it. Let me share my screen and I will start a PowerPoint that I'll hopefully will not bore you with. There we are. All right, so this is the D5000 learning series of the district grants. If you didn't intend to be here, you may want to back yourself out and find what the other one of the 3 sessions that you could be attending instead of this one. But if you're here to learn about district grants, I'm excited about being able to share with you some of the mystifying aspects of the district grants and Rotary Foundation. If I go to the next slide. How many of you folks feel that this is kind of what it looks like when you think about what you have to go through for the Rotary Foundation and all of the nuances that occur? Well, it's really not that difficult. It's a lot easier than this. So let's go ahead and get started. Everything that you need to know about the Rotary Foundation for what we're doing for district grants is at the District 5000 website. If you go to https Rotary D5000 and then you go into the district grants info and documents, you'll find almost everything you really would need for your club to be able to share with them. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. And folks, this is, I want you to feel comfortable to go ahead and ask questions at any time. Interrupt me if you wish, ask a question, put it on the chat. Benson will, I think, is looking at those and will capture those and alert me if there's any questions that any of you folks have. So one of the things that we're trying to accomplish today is to talk about the district grant applications and what we have to do for the district grants for 23-24. And as you folks know, we have a due date that's coming up. What is that due date? It is June 14th. So write that down. June 15th, 2023. So that is when the grants applications are due and required into Rotary. And where do we send those to? We send them to grants@rotaryd5000.org. So please make sure I'll repeat that a couple times. So it's June 15th. And make sure you send that to that mailbox to send all your grants to. Okay. Some of you have been sending me emails and asking me, where is the grant allocation of funds for 2023-24? Well, it's not here yet, but we're very close. We've got a meeting next week, and that meeting is to actually go over that and discuss it. As you folks know, in the past, most of this was done by Mark Harbison, and then unfortunately, we lost Mark Harbison last year. And he's got big shoes to fill, and I have elected to take his position, and we'll be doing that going forward. And I know I've got big shoes to fill for all that he knows, and so there's a learning curve with regards to getting up to speed on some of this stuff and some of the things he was doing with regards to the allocation of funds. So let's share with you about the allocation of funds from last year, so at least you get a better understanding, so that when that does come out in the next week or two, you're going to be able to know how to read that and how to understand it. So here's an eye chart. And this is what we call the allocation of funds. If you can't see that, that's okay. I'm going to show you a better picture of that in a moment. But it tells you how the funds are used by Rotary and how you folks get money back from Rotary. It looks at an average of 3 years of usage of the funds that you give to the annual fund. So if you see there 2018, 19, 19, 20, and 20 and 21, it takes those 3 years and it creates an average. And based on that average of 3 years, it then can figure out what is your matched and no matched funds that are going to be given to you folks, as well as what you're going to be getting for global funds. Benson, any questions from anybody at this time? So I'll move on. So I'm going to pick on the Rotary Club of Ala Moana. Why? Well, they start with A at their top of the chart, and that way I don't have to print the whole thing. So let's just pretend my good friends at Ala Moana probably won't be offended. So let me go ahead and share this because it is public information and everybody has access to this. So the Ala Moana Club has their annual giving, or what they give to the annual fund for those 3 months or 3 years, 18, 19, 19, 20, and 2021. And their average is $11,173, which amounts to about 3.7% of the total amount of annual giving. So that's what we use to be able to figure out how much comes back to them at the end of the year. So why would a club want a steady and consistent donations to the annual fund? Any ideas? Well, if you notice, a lot of clubs do have a pretty steady return. Some do waver a little bit, but what's important about trying to have a steady fund is a lot of people use these funds to help run the projects they do every single year. And if you have a steady amount of money that's coming in for to the annual fund, that means you're going to get a steady amount of money coming back on an average basis. If you have a very low on 1 month and a very large return to the annual fund on the next one and another really low one, then you're going to be juggling a budget that's going to be difficult to manage. And you're going to have to be raising more money or raising less money to be able to cover how much money you're going to be getting. So I strongly try to encourage clubs to try to, keep their giving to the annual fund consistent. Doesn't mean you can't increase it. We'll love that. We want that, but we want it to go up in moderation. There's history of some clubs receiving a huge gift of over $100,000 to the annual fund, and they weren't a big contributor to the annual fund. And then all of a sudden they got this big gift and they couldn't raise enough money to be able to do the matching money that's necessary for that. So that's kind of why we like to see a consistent amount of money that's going to the annual fund, so you folks know how to control your budgets. All right, so that then attributes to 2 different numbers that are used for your grant application. One is the no match, and the other is matched DDF. So if we look at the no match, what does that mean? Well, no match is free money. So that basically means that is money that is going to be given to you to be used without anything else. You don't have to give any money. That is a gift back from Rotary. It's free money. You do need to fill out the application. You do need to submit that application, but you're going to get $1,108 to be able to use it any project you want. So it's a good idea to possibly use that money first. Then you got the no match, or I'm sorry, the matched funds. With the matched funds of 1,662, we need to match that DDF with club cash. So I'm sure I'm not for those of you that are experienced in the Rotary Foundation, this probably isn't anything earth-shaking. This isn't difficult, but for those of you that haven't done this before, these 2 numbers are important because this is what you're going to use to file for your money to be able to receive these monies and use them for your district grants. So let's go back to the website. This is a picture or a snapshot of the website, and I put the website on the top. So if you want to mark that or copy that, that's fine. And it shows you on the right-hand side, foundation grant qualifications, and it also shows you there the DDF grant application. So the grant application is a you fill this out yourself. You basically will get a report that looks like this, and it gives you a chance to fill it out. Now, I've gone ahead and filled one out as a mock, and you're going to see that it says 2022. Laura will probably have to work with the team to get these updated, so it says 2023, but you can go ahead and make that change on it yourself. So if you want to get started, you can go ahead and make the change on that to say that this is 23, 24. And you go ahead and fill this out. And I'm calling this the Lonely Hearts Homeless Shelter. And I've gone ahead and said the proposed project is to provide food for a project for 52 people. That's in Kaneohe, Oahu. And that the Rotary Club of XYZ is going to bring food supplies to this shelter for Thanksgiving, and that we're also going to provide some entertainment. So just a little history of what you folks do for your particular projects. How will non-Rotarians benefit? Members of the shelter will receive a nice meal, blankets and sheets, along with personal hygiene supplies. And then you can talk about how you folks are going to also publicize this, and that you're making a disclaimer that no Rotarians are going to benefit from this. And then you need to create a budget. So you see that there we've got a budget that's created. Now, how many of your clubs are actually using repeat projects that you do every single year? Those projects are great projects to use for these because you already have a history with these. You already kind of know what type of budget you're going to need. You already know what you expect to have to raise for that and how much money you're going to need. So it kind of gives you a leg up on creating the district grant. So this is the budget that we created for this particular one. And I wanted to ask you folks a question. Can you do an international project on a district grant? Thumbs up if it's yes. Thumbs down up if it's no, or down if it's no. All right, well, it is. You can do international projects with district grant funds. And that's important to know because a lot of people aren't aware of that. They think, oh, it says district grant, so I got to use it within my district. No, you don't even have to use it within your district. You can help out another district. So you can use district grant money for anything. It's the issue of separation between a global grant and a district grant is really the size of the grant and how it's reported and who runs it and who's in charge of it. So if you have a relationship with a project that is in another country and you want to, let's say, deliver some bicycles for an orphanage so the kids can get to school, no problem. You would like to work with a Rotary Club that's in that area. It's not critical if you've got a great relationship with that particular orphanage, or even if you have your own members that are going out there, nothing stops you from going ahead and creating a district grant that says, I'm going to give $500 to create to buy some bicycles, create a nursery so that the people can grow their own vegetables for being self-sufficient. Things of that nature you can do on a district grant that are small in nature, as long as they don't exceed a certain dollar amount. All right.
Dave,
Yes.
can I just add one more statement to that?
Absolutely.
That was excellently put. The other critical thing is that district grant has to be completed within the Rotary year so that you can report on it by May 31st of 2024. Because if we don't get that report in for your one club, that will jeopardize next year's grant for the entire district. So it's critical You trust the club you're working with internationally. You make sure they can do that bicycle project, hopefully in the first half of the year, so you can get it reported on.
Very good. Thank you very much, Laura. And she is absolutely correct. International projects sometimes do take a little bit more work, and that's why global grants can be done over a period of time and not just that year. All
What
right.
is the financial limit?
Pardon me?
What is the financial limit?
There isn't a financial limit. The financial limit is really how much money you have to spend. And so if you're filing for a district grant, you're utilizing the money that you've given as a contribution. So you have a limit in that area. So if you want to take all the money that's available to you from the district grants and use it for an international project, you can. But it's probably not going to still reach the dollar amount that you would need for a global grant. All right.
Thanks.
And then when can a club spend funds? This is something that comes up a lot, and I like to make sure that we address this. You folks know how much money you're going to have to spend, and you know how much you're requesting because you're going to be submitting those district grant applications pretty soon. But that doesn't mean you can go out there and start working on those district grants. Sure, you can work on them, you can start on them, but you can't spend any of the funds yet. If you want to do some groundwork on it, to go ahead and start doing triage on these things and start talking to the groups about it, that's okay. But if you need to buy things, buy dictionaries, those types of things, you're not able to do that until one, the committee votes and approves all of the grants that have been submitted, and two, that the monies have been disseminated and put into your grants account. So be aware of that. The issue is if someone doesn't follow these rules, and if a club is audited and we find out that that's not happening, it can jeopardize the whole program to the whole District 5000 from Rotary International. So there is some pain if something like that were to occur. So please be aware that if you are going to be spending money that needs to be spent prior to maybe an October date timeframe, and that's about the time that the approvals are made and the money starts to come out, is around October, because it has to go through both the committees here locally in District 5000, and then it also needs to be submitted to RI and approved. And then once all that is done, then they disseminate the money to us, to the district, and the district then gives it out to all of the clubs. And that's why it takes some time. All right. The other thing is when you're filling out these reports, I found out the hard way. When you're going to save it, it'll give you a little note that says, do you want to save it with changes or without changes? If you don't forget to do that, you're going to get a nice blank report. So please go ahead and make sure that you save it with the changes. And then you can rename that one and create 6 different grants applications if you so desire, but make sure you label each one of them separately. All right, so this is page 2. So you've created your budget. Now you need to basically figure out, I'm trying to get this out of the way. There we go. Now you want to figure out how you're going to allocate those funds. So that's totally up to you. You're going to have a certain amount of money that is no match and some that is matched. In this particular case, I went ahead and arbitrarily decided I need $600 for this budget. I'm going to take $200 from matched, $200 from no match, and I have to match that $200. So there's $200 there. So it's total of $600. Of that $600, $400 is coming from the grants request, and only $200 is being paid by our club money. Questions on that? So if I had $600 in no match, I could put all $600 in no match. I could put $300 in match and $300 in cash and nothing in no match. And that's becomes a little juggling match. And I've got something that might help you out if you're a club that has a large amount of money and you probably may do more than 2 or 3 or 4 grants. I've got something that might help you figure that stuff out a little bit easier and work on that through a spreadsheet that I created. So I'll show you that in a bit. Now at the bottom here, it says, and I'm going to go back up a page. You notice here, there's 2 boxes. Those boxes should not be checked when you submit an application. We wanted to make it easier for you folks. So basically, when you folks are doing these grant applications, this form that you're filling out is actually going to be your final report or part of your final report. So keep this, save this, and when you do submit your final report, you're going to want to then say, yes, this is my final report. I'll click on this. And then at the bottom here, you're going to have your president sign it again, that this is the final report. All right. So you're going to fill this part out. You're also going to say who is responsible for this particular project, phone number, email, name. And also who's the person who's signing it, and that should be your club president. You can fill this out. This will automatically default to the same thing, but you're not going to have her sign, he or she sign that. You're just going to have them sign that section that's in the authorization box. Okay. So as we said, the district grant application also becomes the basis of your final report. And when is that final report due? Any questions or any ideas on that? All right. It is due
May 31st.
at the
Yeah.
latest. At the latest. Thank you very much. But it's actually due 2 months after you complete your project. If you complete your project in November, like that one that we're doing, the Thanksgiving project for the one that I created here from the Lonely Hearts homeless shelter. If that one was supposed to be Thanksgiving, well, I better have my final grant completed probably about December or at the latest January timeframe. Otherwise, someone's going to say, "Hey, how come your Thanksgiving project took 6 months to complete?" That doesn't make sense. So be aware that it is 2 months after your project was completed, or the May 31st, whichever is first. Whichever is first, not whichever is last. So I know some people like our club, we kind of throw a bunch of things into one category. And so it does take longer to complete them all. So we turn them in at the end. But that's because we have some that are still stragglers and have to be completed at the end, and they're in one grant application. All right, any questions on that? So I told you I'd send you something or provide you something that I created that I think helps me figure out how we're going to do all of our grants. And one of the things that I've done and what our club does is we kind of ask all of the Avenue of Service chairs to provide us with what projects they want to do and what they want as a budget before we create our budget. So here I've got it separated by vocation or by Avenue of Service: vocational service, youth services, community service, international service. I would go to those chairs and ask them, what projects are you wanting to do next year? And one might says, oh, we want to do some funds for Ukraine and Cambodia, where we also want to do that Cambodia project that we normally do with the orphanage in Cambodia. And our vocational group, they always like to do the Unsung Heroes project, which we kind of give a financial reward and a plaque for those people that are unsung heroes. So they come up with their budget. Now, it doesn't mean we're going to give them all of that money. They come up with how much they want to spend. And then I have to figure out, well, how do I use all of the funds that we have to create grants that can be used to help subsidize that or fully fund it? And so then I start saying, okay, they want, let's take just one at the top. I put on the top line here, I'm not sure if you see my arrow or my cursor, but I put in how much our club matched funds are, how much is going to be no match. And then because this is matched fund, I have to match this with club cash. So here is club cash at 3,323. I've got our matched funds and our no match funds for a total of $8,861. I like this because when I go back to the club, I tell them our $3,323 investment generated us the ability to do $8,861 worth of services. Boy, that talks volumes. That basically shares with people that for about 35–40% of the funds that we gave, we got this much more out of it. So let them know how your money is being spent and how all of the funds that people give to the annual fund come back to your club to make you be able to do more with your money. So now you're starting to do more projects, or you're increasing the volume of what you're doing in those projects, you know, the quantity of what you're doing. So as you start plugging these numbers in, it starts to subtract this from this total. And that total becomes, when it becomes equal, it zeroes out this number here. So this shows, this line shows down here when there's nothing here. And as I start adding those numbers in, it goes down to zero. When everything is allocated, when I've got all zeros across, I know I've filled in every one of those buckets, and I can play with the numbers and I can say, I'm sorry, Mary, I can't give you 1,100, but I can give you 1,050. And if you need an extra $50, then we'll just take it from the general fund and put that in the budget.
This is Glenn. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Are you going to be able to email that to us?
happy to do so. I'll see if I can stick it on the chat. Can I do that, Benson, as an Excel spreadsheet?
Oh, boy. I'd be for me, it's probably better if I just get a straight email.
Send me an email. I'll send you my email contact, and then I'm happy to send it, or just just shoot me an email at david.mozdren@hawaiiantel.com.
David.
Dot Mozdren, MOZDREN @hawaiiantel.com.
I'll put it in the chat for you, Dave.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right. So I'm going to move on to the next, unless you folks have any questions. And again, this is just my little cheat sheet, but for those clubs that do more than 2 or 3 grants, something like this is helpful, because otherwise you're constantly playing with numbers and doing math and figuring it out. And also, I use this to give it to my treasurer, because I give this to my treasurer, and then the treasurer is able to create different ledgers for each one of these grants, and is able to track the funds that they're making sure it's coming out of the right ledger. All right, so we're back to grant qualifications. Now, all of you probably have gone through the grant qualification process. If you haven't, you're going to be getting visited by Laura Steelquist. Laura's got that list, and I think our club was even on that list. Hopefully we're not anymore, but if we are, Laura, I need to talk to you. There's several things that need to be done, and probably the hardest thing sometimes is for some of our clubs that didn't have a president-elect or a president nominee. That is a requirement for you when you are actually applying for these, and you need to have those people in place. So let's talk a little bit more about the foundation. So when you go back to the website, you're going to see these foundation grant qualification documents, the qualification checklists, the memorandum of understanding, and the addendum to the TRF qualification of the MOU. And that's something that our district requests as a change from RI that they approve, but we all have to sign that we are accepting that. And then there's a financial management plan.
Are all of these documents signed by our president?
They should be, yes, there is, go ahead, Laura.
Okay, they're actually signed by the current
President-elect.
president-elect,
Elect.
who will be the president for the year that the grant is happening, okay? And then the second box is supposed to be signed by your president nominee, so the president the year after. However, we know that an enormous number of clubs do not yet have that person in place. So that second box can be signed by your current president, or it can be signed by your foundation chair if necessary, because we need you to get those documents in and signed. You need to read them, okay? Because what you're doing is you're making a covenant with the district who has already signed these documents with Rotary International, that you're going to do all the things that are written in there in the form that you're going to sign, okay?
All right, thank you very much, Laura. So as you'll see, these are all of the documents that you're going to be going through and looking for, and some of the requirements that you need to submit in order to be qualified. So the MOU and the district addendum, that has to be signed. The financial management plan, which means that you need to open up a dedicated bank account. And that dedicated bank account is for your district grants. Only for your district grants. And all the funds that are allocated that are going to be sent to you need to go immediately into that grant account and not into your savings account or your personal accounts or anything else. It has to go into this account, and that needs to be a secure bank account, not something with a lot of risk. So you can't be putting it in stocks or options or things of that nature. And that's where you're going to be drawing against. So that grants account needs to be created. Please make a note that if you are banking with somebody that's going to say, if you have a zero balance, they're going to close the account, always have an extra $100 or maybe $300 in there. I think our club does $300, whatever dollar amount it is. And just put that down as a note by the treasurer, so that when you do exhaust your account, you're still going to have some money in there that's the residual from the year before, that's going to keep your bank account open, because you don't want to be opening and closing this grant account every single year. It makes havoc on your check requests. You also need to provide us evidence of your federal tax return. So I know some clubs become a little delinquent with that, but that's important. We need to have that. District grants final reports all need to be also submitted from the year before. So all of these are things that need to be done either the year before or as part of the current process of being accepted to be able to have grant qualifications for this year. And as we say at the bottom, also need to be able to attend the district grants training. Because otherwise you don't learn this stuff. And I know it doesn't come easy. It takes a few times to get it through, to understand it, and the light bulb will go on and everybody will go, oh, now I understand it, or at least I understand that part. So here again is your district, how your district grant account should look like. It should be the Rotary Club from my club, Honolulu Sunrise, district grants account. That's how it should read, exactly like that. So they don't want it to be anything different. That way it's easy for us to figure out what that is, and we don't have to be hunting and searching and figuring out that it's a different club. They also want you to have separate ledgers for all the district grant projects. And that just means that within the payouts of your treasurer wants to keep track of each individual grant application. So that if there's $500 for this one and $600 for this one, you're basically taking the money out of that particular ledger and utilizing those funds properly for that particular disbursement. Okay. You also need for your disbursements of checks, you need 2 signatures are required for every check request. That can be done on the checks themselves, but some banks don't have 2 signatures, or they don't honor that. So if that's the case, then you need to use a check request form that has 2 signatures on it. And if you're asking to be reimbursed for money that you spent for this, that's fine. But please don't put your name as one of the requesters of approvals on it if it's money being reimbursed to you, because then it does look like there's some impropriety there, because you don't have 2 separate signatures on it. So if you're the department chair for your Avenue of Service chair and you're wanting to get reimbursed for the food that you bought for the youth service group that you had and you were having, that was part of your project that you were working on, sure, you can get reimbursed for that, but get 2 other people to put their names on that signature block. And then proof of expenditures. That's really critical. And I think some clubs do a pretty good job on the electronic part, but they often miss things on the written part and keeping that for 5 years. So it's important and critical that we keep both the physical and electronic files of our final reports and our receipts for every single year for 5 years. So that means you've got to have an archive to keep those files. I put them in a large envelope that gets pretty thick and mark it and put it back in the back of my file cabinet, and they know where it's at. And so tell them where it's at in case something happens to you. All right, so that is pretty much what I've got for this. I can go through to the website and kind of walk you through some things if there's questions. We can actually try to do a mock grant request, but I wanted to open it up for questions.
I don't really have a question, but I did just give a presentation at our club at our Thursday meeting on district grants and global grant descriptions and submission process. And if you'd like, I can email that to you and you can decide if you like it. But it's really intended for the members, especially new members, to get educated on what you need to do to put a grant together. And so I've got a whole section here, process on how to submit proposed district grant projects, and then allow the little wickets that we ask them to kind of follow. You know, don't promise anything in advance to anybody because you can't do that until it's approved, all those little tips. So if you'd like that, I'll email it to you and then you can decide if you want to send that out.
Glenn, please send it. You know, I don't think any of us do any of these presentations without stealing some information from somebody else. We go through them, we find things we like, we say, oh, this one makes sense, I like this one, I'm going to use this one, cockroach it, use it for our presentation, and then maybe add our own touch to things. So yes, absolutely.
Okay, I'll shoot that to you in an email and then you can decide how to put it out. But it just, people, especially new members, they don't have a clue on what's going on, and a lot of people have a lot of ideas, but I tell them, if you've got an idea, start getting ready to work, because throwing an idea out there and expecting somebody else to execute it, it's not going to work real well, especially in our club where we do like 12 district grants a year. So
yeah,
I need the manpower.
Yeah, I understand. You and I and a few other clubs have a large number of grants that we do, and that's kind of why we put it on the shoulders of the people that are in the avenues of service. So if they want to do a particular project and they want to get funding, we want them to try to use as much money as we can from the grants first before we start using it from the general fund. We exhaust all of that money first before we start pulling from the general fund.
And I just want to remind everybody that the reason that Honolulu Sunrise and Honolulu Sunset can do so many grants and have so much money to spend is because their members have collected and have donated that amount of funds that has gone to RI and come back to be spent. So that fundraising really is important in your clubs. But the one thing I did want to share, that wasn't the reason I said it, Dave, you know me, I just couldn't resist that. So it's all about the money, yeah.
It
So
is
we
about
come,
money.
it's because it's the way we can do good in the world, yeah. But the one thing that I will tell you that Dave Hamill had a great deal of difficulty with this year. I'm going to try to help a little bit more in the process next year so that you don't run into this, is that we have the ability to go ahead and just deposit. The funds are available usually the end of September or the 1st of October if everybody gets their applications in. And it's really frustrating when we get the money in and the clubs don't send us the information showing that they have put their funds into the dedicated account, their matching funds, and they don't send us a copy of the bank statement showing that the money is in those funds that also has the name of the account and the account number on it, because then Dave can just deposit the money directly into your account. We don't have to go through the check writing and sending it over to the other island, the checks getting lost, all that stuff. So we really recommend that you do that. We actually still have 2 clubs right at the moment who have not yet received their funds for this year. So yeah, we're getting kind of close to the deadline here, guys, and I know we'll get that done. But we should be having all the funds dispersed. Everybody should have their funds to spend by the 1st of October. My goal.
Good
Hey,
point.
Dave,
Thank you.
Sharon's got a question. Sharon, go ahead.
Dave, I don't believe you covered the global grants that we get with the DDS. And
Yeah,
I guess my question on that was, let's say our club had $800 of this global grant and we weren't going to use it. Now, if another club could use it, this $800, do I still have to match this $800 or just, am I just able to somehow give this $800 to the club that needs it? Like Mark, usually sends out an email saying unused global grants. You can put it against these projects, but I wasn't clear whether we still had to match that grant.
Sharon, good point. If there is money that is allocated for global grant, it needs to be matched. Who it's
Oh.
matched with is up to, well, you probably need to get permission for that, right, Laura?
Well, what'll actually happen, Sharon, is you'll just let Dave Mosdrin know that, Dave, you know what, our club is not going to do it, and I really hope you'll reconsider and at least put $100 into somebody else's grant so that you can participate in a global grant and they can tell you what they're doing with the money. And that you would have to match out of your club cash, the $100. But then you tell Dave, okay, we had $800 allocated. We're not going to use $700 of it. So then Dave, in his magical huge brain, like Mark had, will know that he has $700, that when another club is looking for additional funds and they have the money to match it, he can say, yeah, the district has this extra $700 because Sharon didn't use all of her money, so that you can do that. You can have it for your project if you want it. And it's a committee that decides how that money is allocated out again.
Okay. All right. I think
You do it the same as you've done it in the past. Sorry.
okay. And I know that when you match these funds, it comes back to your club as I guess you get points for it or something like that. And you could use those points to give away to a member or to get closer to their Paul Harris. Correct?
That's correct. So when you write your check to the Rotary International for your contribution portion, that shows up as part of your club's shared points. And so when we write a check for, let's say, $5,000 or $10,000 for a global grant, that shows up right on the top line of our club name as another $10,000 in recognition points that can be used to give Paul Harris points to Paul Harris Fellows to other people, or to get them to match that money to get that recognition points. So it's a nice way of asking them to say, you give 100, we'll match it 100. That way you get something for your money.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. But I share the sentiment that Laura says, even if you can just afford $100, participating in a global grant makes you have the same ownership of it as the person that's giving the lion's share of that money. So, participate in, have that person who is sponsoring that global grant locally come talk to your club and share what they're doing and what your club is actually doing for that $100. And some of them will actually have opportunities to travel and go out to those sites and see them. And then there's an opportunity for someone in your club to go and really have a life-changing moment to go out there and see how that's touched that organization or that group that we're helping. Any other questions?
Dave,
Timo, go ahead.
over here. Someone who's done global and district grants over the years. Dave, I think you've done a really good job in explaining it. One of the things, as I recall, that's kind of fuzzy is the match, no match. And it gets a little confusing when you look across the page and you see those numbers pop out. Can you sort of, especially for the newer people, can you kind of give a really quick overview again on how to decipher what my club's going to be able to offer in terms of no match money and the matching? And then also you forgot to mention too, you mentioned there's a matching that's for district grant, and then there's a matching for global grant. So you should probably just clarify that, especially for some of the newer people that haven't heard. Is that right, Laura? Laura's nodding, so I don't know what that means. But.
No, and Dave, it might help just a little bit if I gave a 30-second synopsis of the history of this.
Go right ahead, but that's,
Okay,
I will
so there's
say though,
about,
before you
Yeah.
start, Laura, I will say that that's one of the things that we are working on doing is to trying to make this a little more clear. I've been working with Dell, and we are working on trying to make that so it's a little bit more succinct and understandable for the layperson. Because
Okay,
it does.
so
Go
so
ahead.
what I'm about to say may change completely, because the people who make this decision every year, and they make a decision every year on how to allocate these funds, all right, is the foundation committee, which is the DRFCC, the DG line, and the grants people, okay? But the reason that no match and match is set up the way it is, and our district was one of the first districts that ever since Hal Darcy's time, we've been allocating the funds back to the clubs who earned the money with that little percentage kind of thing, all right? A lot of districts in the world just take the money, the district decides how to spend it, people send in applications, and 4 or 5 clubs will use the money and everybody else doesn't. So we wanted everybody to participate. So that's why this is set up like this. And I don't know how many of you can remember back in the old days when global grants got most of the district funds. We had the district's simplified grant, which was clubs could get a very small amount of money to spend each year on local projects. And so that didn't require any matching. It allowed the smaller clubs to have some money to spend in the community. So when this was set up, that no match is the same percentage as the district simplified grant was. So that smaller clubs can just ask for the money. They don't have to match it. I don't have $200 to match. Fine, you've got $200 to spend locally in your community. And then the rest of your allocation, the amount that you have that you can match, we've been through, okay? But that's the history on why it was set up. But every year, the foundation committee has the ability to completely change, and DGE Mark is the one who has he gets a little extra vote on this. He may not know that, yeah, but he gets a little extra vote on it. They have the ability to decide how the funds are going to be allocated. Sorry, okay, now I go back.
Yeah, and I apologize, but I was instructed that this was supposed to be for district grants, so I was focusing on the applications for district grants, and that's why we weren't talking about global grants, because we have a longer period of time to submit for global grants. So, we'll have another conversation on global grants, but it's almost like it's not a full 50-50, but let's just say 50-50. But of 50%, there's going to be 30% of that is going to be for matched, and 20% of that would be no match. And then the balance of that would be for global grants. But it doesn't really work out exactly because there is some overhead that Rotary does have because of the fact that we've exhausted a lot of the funds. Our funds at Rotary are not as strong as they used to be because of all of the giving to Ukraine and other disasters that have occurred. So that has caused a little bit of a shrinking of how much money comes back to each district. But we'll hope to be able to make it a little bit clearer on the next go around when the allocation comes out.
This is Glenn. So in our club, what I try to do, and I've done this a few years, we try to separate the no match grants and then the match grants so they're not confusing on the forms. So in other words, we'd find if we've got $2,000 in no match, we'd come up with 1 or 2 projects that would completely use up that no match money, and then the match money would be for the other grants that we're writing. So it's a little easier to write that way instead of trying to mix no match money up with match money. And I don't know, just the way we do it.
That's your prerogative. There's no problem with that at all. But if you look at the application form, it makes it pretty easy for you to mix and match them because it's just putting the numbers into the right box and it automatically adds it up for you. And then it's basically just taken out when that application is submitted. It's taken out so that it's removed from the right columns. So if it's a matched funds, it's taken out of the match. If it's no match, it's taken out of that. And it looks at how much money you've contributed. And on global grants, the only thing they add is the extra 5% for the service fee. So, if that's the way you do it and it works for you, that's fine. I think a lot of the clubs still do it with mixing and matching, but that's your prerogative. Good point. I'm glad you're in a position where you've got enough funds that you could do that.
Give to the foundation, guys. That's how it works.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. More you give, the more you get back.
Absolutely. Can I ask what club you're with?
Honolulu Sunset.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Okay, guys, hey, we're getting close, David. Let me add one more thing. I would venture to say that this is probably, if not the most, but one of the most confusing things in the district that we've been trying to teach for a long time now. It doesn't have to be because actually, once you understand it, it is relatively simple. The problem that we're seeing, at least in the people that are doing the training, is that a lot of times this information doesn't pass on to the next generation. And what's happening is the new people that are coming in, like they've got to start all over again. And unless you get plugged in early, and especially the PEs and even the nominees, into understanding this system, like it was when I was, first PE, it was confusing to me. But honestly, Laura was in one training and she explained it like in about 10 minutes. I got it after like 2 years of trying to understand it. So really the plug-in is really important, is that you got to plug into this process. You got to get a group in your club that wants to understand this process. And I'm talking to the PEs and the presidents that are on this call right now, is that you need a group of people in your club that are willing to sit down, and like I said, it doesn't take long. In about a half an hour, you can go through, even if you just review the stuff that's on the website right now, or take Dave's PowerPoint and walk through it. You can get a group of people in your club to say, okay, I get this. And like what Kimo was saying, it's a very common thing. Like even in our club, they don't know like, okay, so what's match mean? What's no match mean? And then do you add those two or what gets subtracted? I mean, so it's kind of confusing, but if one person gets it and that information can sort of carry on into the next group, then it makes it so much more simple. And that I know that's kind of like where we're at, is that we lost a little continuity after the pandemic. And so kind of like all that base information that was in our club for years and years, it just disappeared. So we had to start all over again. But anyway, great presentation. And Laura, thank you so much for the help today. And Glenn
Thank you.
too, that's really great. Okay, any other questions, comments? Anybody wanna add anything? Anybody who's on here that seems a little maybe daunted by the process? Could we help you in any way? If you put your email down in the chat, I'll connect you. I'll send you over Dave's presentation, or we can even schedule a time individually with your club. Just get 3 or 4 of your people together who really want to understand this. And it's not hard to get if somebody will just walk you through it. So, but super nice job, Dave.
Thank you all for your time. Appreciate it. Again, my door is always open. If you have any questions, feel free to give me a call.
Yeah, I put Dave's email in the chat, so you guys can go ahead and harass him anytime, 24/7 days old.
That's right. I'll make sure I forward the midnight calls to Benson.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna wind up this session. If you're hanging around for the next session, we've got leadership opportunities in our club and our district. Ted's gonna facilitate that. Laura's gonna help again. So we got a good session coming up. So I'm gonna stop the recording now. We're gonna pause for probably 4 or 5 minutes.